Awesome. So if you didn't know already, my name is Zeph. I'm a member specialist here at Library Thing and TinyCat. So we're going to spend about 45 minutes just seeing what it feels like to move through TinyCat as like a patron at first, who's using the library to search for items and check things out. And then we'll switch to the librarian's perspective so you can see what it's like to do that as a librarian and to manage the settings and set up the TinyCat from the beginning.
Perfect.
Yeah. And then after that, we'll have about 15 or so minutes for questions. And again, feel free to, put any questions in the chat if they come to you while we're talking about it. Um, so TinyCat is an online catalog for small libraries. It's really user friendly, so it's really easy to share with your patrons or other visitors. It's really easy to share with other library staff if you have folks who help you with your library. So TinyCat is going to sit on top of your records, but those records are created and edited within the Library Thing website. And Library Thing will act like your ILS or integrated library system for your TinyCat catalog. By the way, everything that we're going to see today is available to you at any level, so there aren't any like hidden or upgraded features that we charge extra for, that sort of thing.
Okay.
So first we're going to look at a sample library so you can see an example of what a patron might see when they enter a TinyCat. And right away, you'll see that there's a big logo and a big title and search bar. Can you see my screen okay?
Yes. Yep.
We've got some welcome text here and some links at the bottom that the librarian has put in here for me. And I also see this scrolling cover carousel,
Mm.
various titles from the library. So the search bar tells me right away what I can do in here as a patron, right? This is a search-based system. And if I had any questions about that, this welcome text that my library's put in here for me can tell me that and other ways that I can use what's on this page. And I'll show you how to customize all of this when we're in the librarian's perspective. But right now, let's pretend I'm a patron. And, you know, you can do a really broad search or a really narrow search. So let's start with a broad one. If I just type the words old books in the search bar, it's going to pull up all results that have either of those words in them, right? It's doing a really broad search.
Uh-huh.
Now, I can sort that search as a patron, right? I can choose, maybe I want to see by title. I can also narrow it down with these facets on the right? I can just click to say, okay, I want it to also just include the tag folk tales. And with the results themselves, you'll see that there are some books here just have the word old in the title, for example, or some have the old books tag. And
Hmm.
the top two have both, right? Because it's automatically sorting by relevancy.
Okay.
So if we go back to the homepage and we do another search, but we narrow it down to the tag old books. So we just want books that have that specific tag. Then a search comes up with just items that have that tag. And I can still further narrow it down if I want to. I'm going to go back to the home screen again, and I just want to show you a third way to search. So we do have an advanced search option, which is great for patrons who might be more accustomed to maybe like a university library or somewhere else where they're used to filling out an advanced search form, right?
Yep.
So that could be relevant for some patrons, maybe less so for others. So you can highlight that if you want to. Now, that's searching, but there's also a way to simulate browsing, even though TinyCat is a search-based system, right? So we've got this cover carousel, which I mentioned, and you can customize that to either show the most recently added items to your collection, or you
Uh-huh.
could update it to show random items in your library, which I really like actually as a way to highlight things that, even you may have forgotten you have in the back of your shelves. And the other way to simulate browsing is through these links at the bottom of the page. So you can actually put these links up here. You can put links kind of throughout this homepage if you want to. And these links are links to searches within TinyCat. So if I click old books here, I can see that my librarian has anticipated that that's something I might want to search for. And so they've
Okay.
sort of front loaded that work and put it on the homepage for me. So I can just click that and it does this tag search. It doesn't have to be a tag. I mean, tags are completely customizable. So it's a really flexible way to sort of organize your data and make certain things searchable. But you could also do a search for like a genre or an author, right? Whatever you want, whatever facet that exists in your data, you can pretty much search for here. And then you can take that search as a librarian and put it on your homepage. So you can play around with that a lot. The goal is really just to anticipate what you think your patrons are going to search, or maybe even offer them some things that they may not know to search, right?
Mm-hmm.
Know that they'll be interested in. You can also link to external things. Like this is just a regular email link, right? Um,
Okay.
and you can see that my librarians also, added some extra spaces and some bolding to make this text more interesting. So you could have all this text at the bottom and all these links under the search bar. You can really play around with this page. Uh,
Great.
a lot you can explore. So let's look at that search page one more time. I just want to sort of see what all shows up in these results, right? So really broad search, right? I searched for like 128 items, and I can see that we've got a decent amount of info, right? We've got tags, we've got the series, we've got maybe the format if it's present, and the publication date. And we've also got these buttons that we'll talk about more later. But first, let's dive into a detail page, which is like the book page, right? We call these detail pages in TinyCat.
Okay.
And part of that is us trying to acknowledge that you can catalog a lot more than books in library thing, and you can circulate, pretty much anything you want using TinyCat. So we refer to things as items rather than books a lot of the time, but you'll still be navigating some bookish terminology in the fields that you're filling out. So your game might have to have an author, so to speak, and you can determine sort of the role of that author. So let's take a look at some of the information on this page. We've got a big old cover image and title. We also have some options as a patron where I can share this book, either through social media or email. And I also have been given the ability to star items. So my librarian can pick and choose, which of these options exist for me.
Ah, okay.
So you don't have to include any of these, but you could also include all of them. Totally up to you. Um, so how does this star work? So this basically creates sort of an ephemeral list. So this list now exists up in the star icon at the top of the page. I can add like a bunch of books to that list and go check it out here. And then I can go through and, maybe place a hold on all of those items if my library lets me place holds, that is. I could also email the whole list to myself or to a teacher, so there's lots of ways that you could use this list. I like to think of it as sort of pulling books off of a shelf, right, as you're walking through a library. That's sort of what you're doing here. I'm going to go ahead and unstar that though. And you see, you can even email just one book at a time, lots to play with. So I want to point out a few things on this page. We're going to come back to this sort of circulation section soon. But first I want to point out reviews. So my library, the sample library here, has allowed two different types of reviews for me to see. So I can see that we've got published reviews and member reviews. Published reviews are just what you'd expect from the title, right? They're formal reviews, usually published by a big name like Publishers Weekly or New York Times. And these, if they don't exist for an item, but you want to include them, you can add and like link to the formal review in Library Thing, right? Which is again where all of your data is sort of created and stored.
Okay.
Member reviews are actually reviews by Library Thing members. So there tend to be more of them, right? We've got two published reviews and 25 member reviews. And I expanded that so you can see that sometimes they're quite long, which is, a real boon for some patrons and maybe less for others. I would say that some highlights of member reviews are that they tend to be a little bit less salesy and formal, which can be really nice, right? You get a little bit more of an honest take on the books. They're sort of readers creating reviews for other readers. Whereas publishers I'm sorry, published reviews might be a little bit more cautious in their tone.
Hmm.
And then the member reviews are still, this is good to note that they're also still audited by real librarians. So there is a quality assurance in them, but it's going to be a little bit less formal. So again, you get to just pick and choose what shows on this page. Just like with the search pages, you can customize pretty much everything you see here. So you can pick, I want both types of reviews library reviews books as well, then you can also include those reviews here. So you could include a third type of review called libraries review or something like that.
Ah, okay, okay.
Yeah, and you can move these reviews and anything else on this page up and down the page, right? So you're creating some hierarchy, some importance. Um, and so when you're looking at reviews like this, I see your question in the chat. It's a great one. You're looking at reviews from all Library Thing members that are tied to this book. So these are all of I believe they're just vetted reviews. It may not be every single review.
Ah,
But yeah, it's like a prioritized list of reviews, maybe ones that have the most thumbs up. It's got some priority in it. I'm not totally sure on the technical side how that's sorted. But it's member reviews from any Library Thing member, not just your patrons specifically. So
okay.
sort of a window into the wider world of Library Thing that goes beyond your personal TinyCat, which again might be really useful to your patrons, maybe not so much. Totally up to you. And then if you do want to include reviews from your own patrons, you can, prompt them for that information and you can cite them in your own library's review of the item, and edit that to add more as people send you more reviews. And, you could even put that above the others or whatever. Yeah.
Hmm.
A couple other things to note on this page. The subject section here is Library of Congress subject headings, which again, really useful for some librarians, maybe less relevant for others. And one of my favorite features in TinyCat is this similar in this library feature.
Mm.
This uses Library Things robust, almost spookily accurate recommendations feature, which, if you haven't played with that, it's a lot of fun. Just catalog your books on Library Thing, even just for your personal library, and then go to the recommendations page, which it generates like a big batch of them every so often. And see what it recommends, and you'll get some really cool niche things that really align with your books. So, in TinyCat, what's that doing? It's looking at this book and it's doing recommendations based on that book, but limiting it to items within this library.
Mm.
So, indeed, I would say even in this sample library where I only have so much data and it's not totally filled out in all of the ways that a real library might be, it's doing a good job anyway, right?
Mm.
These are four books that I would totally recommend to someone who enjoyed Beloved. So it's working, even in like a half-built library.
Hmm.
Pretty fun to play with. And again, all of this can be included or excluded. There are more things you can include, and you can move it all up and down the page. So I can see as a patron that this book is available to me. And I can also see that I have three actions I can take beyond like sharing and exploring, right? I can circulate in some way. I can engage with circulation here because my library has put these buttons here for me to use. So these are optional too. But I can see that by clicking place hold, I'm able to sign in and place a hold on the item. Similar with checkout, it's just prompting me to sign in. And the third button's a little different. It's ask about this, and it's allowing me to contact the library directly about this book. And so this basically just sends an email to my librarian. And my library maybe doesn't care so much about making sure that I can ask about a book. And maybe it's more important that there's a constant way, I'm just sort of brainstorming here, that there's like maybe a constant way for me to create an account if I don't already have one, or to ask questions about something else, right? So you can change this button to say whatever you want
Ah,
for your patrons. So you might make it say need an account question mark. And you can change this pop-up text to say anything as well. So instead of ask about this in here, you could say, please include a phone number and an email, etc.
mm-hmm.
Okay, so before I move on to the librarian's perspective, I just want to pause and give you a chance to say out loud if you have any other questions about the patron experience in TinyCat that we just went through.
I don't think so. Well, let me think out loud here a minute. So we have not, we're migrating to TinyCat from a more complicated system, and we haven't allowed the patrons to check their books back in. And I think that makes
Mhm.
sense because you could just say you brought a book back without our seeing
Right.
it. Um,
Exactly.
so that makes sense.
Mhm.
But well, I guess since they're customizable, I could put in a button that says renew this book or something.
Yeah, that's a great question. So if I have as a patron have checked this book out already, and so this would say checked out, right? Um, I and I'm logged in, right? So either I've clicked here to log in or I've clicked here to log in somewhere along this browser session. I don't believe that the renew button displays here as a patron. I believe that I have to go to my patron profile, and
Uh,
there I will see a list of items that I've checked out.
okay,
And it'll say if they're overdue. Now, the librarian in the library, you get to choose whether or not your patrons can renew items or not. And
okay,
you also get to choose how long that renewal period is, and I believe even how many times they
mm,
can renew it. And we'll look at that setting together.
okay,
Um, but this is where they will do it. I believe that that is the case for both full circulation and simple circulation. I'll talk more about those distinctions. Um, but yeah, at least for full circulation, I'm quite sure that going here and logging in gives you the opportunity to review items that you have checked out and renew them if your library lets you with full circulation. Yeah.
okay, okay.
Awesome. Great question. And a lot of libraries don't want their patrons checking books back in, like you mentioned. So TinyCat is similar. Only uh, admin users or staff users who have the ability to do circulation are
Hmm.
allowed to return items completely. So some libraries that aren't, maybe staffed all the time that they're open,
Hmm.
will have something like a return bin and log, so that, maybe once a week, an admin or a staff member can go through the log or return the books properly in the system. Yeah.
Right. Okay, good.
Awesome. So let's look at the login for that really quickly. So when you click, actually, let me say what I'm doing here. This padlock icon in the bottom right of the screen is where you will go to log in to TinyCat. And you can go there from any TinyCat page. So you click the padlock and it comes with this pop-up. And this is just for you as an administrator. And you'll
Okay,
enter your password here and click sign in. I always recommend if you're using a device that other people aren't going to be using to go ahead and click stay signed in. It'll just save you some.
okay,
Now, if you've created what we call admin users, so not the main administrator who has the library thing login and has created all the records and gets all the emails, essentially you, um, that person, probably yourself, will log in here. But if you've created additional accounts for staff members or volunteers or billing people, they're going to click to the second tab here to log in. And that I just mentioned because sometimes we get people asking about where that is, and having a little bit of trouble finding the second tab to log in as a staff or a volunteer. So they're still logging into the same account, but with different permissions. Uh,
okay.
Yeah, and you'll create their password for them.
Okay.
Um, yeah, and I'll show you a little bit more of the ins and outs of that. But once you've signed in as your main administrator, and this main administrator login is again the same login as your library thing login,
Okay.
um, this padlock will turn into a little house icon. And this
Okay.
house icon is also how you will quickly go to your admin pages. So we just looked at a circulation process for like a self-circulation by a patron. So in this example where the patron's clicking checkout, maybe they're at a computer in the library lobby. They've got their book in hand, they're ready to walk out the door with it, and they're allowed to check it out on their own. In this example, let's go to the check in and out screen. Let's imagine that we are the librarian standing behind the circulation desk and a patron's just walked up with that book to check it out. So the first thing we do, I'm going to walk through this slowly and then I'll actually refresh and show you kind of the natural pacing of it.
Okay.
So to start with, I'm going to do a really broad search for the book title. And this search bar actually works the exact same way as the search bar we were using before. So you can do a broad search or a narrow search. When I do a broad search for just this one word, you can see it does turn up the book I want, but it also turns up this other book with the funny subtitle, right?
Hmm.
So if you're pulling up more than one book and you just want the one, you click the book you want to add to the transaction. And then if you could also scan the ISBN barcode or your own custom barcode if you have one on the book, and it'll search for those barcode digits in your catalog and populate anything that matches. So we always recommend, if you're creating your own custom barcodes, aim for high numbers that aren't going to look like dates, because that might pull up the publication date, that sort of
Hmm. Hmm.
something to think about. So after you've added your items to the transaction, you're gonna pick the status that the item will have after the transaction. It's assuming you're checking out the book, which makes sense. Maybe you're returning it though, or something else entirely. You can mark it as missing, you can be canceling a hold on a book, or you could create a whole new custom status that will always be available to you after you create it.
Ah,
Um,
okay.
yeah, so lots you can play with there. Libraries who have kind of more unique circulation processes end up using that custom status field a lot. And you can also change what status is your default status for an item.
Hmm.
Next, you're going to pick the patron, and we're going to assume that we're checking that book out. So now we're picking our patron. So I can just start to search, and I think once you have about 3 digits or so, it'll start suggesting. Um,
Okay.
and there we go. There's my my one patron in this sample library is you can see he's got an overdue item. So we got these quick facts on the side here, which are useful. As you can see, I can either search the patron name or I can search by barcode, right? So I can scan or type the barcode in, and I just know it by heart because it's just one for the sample library, the sample patron, excuse me. So either way works. Once you get this green text, you know you're good to go.
Okay.
Next, you're picking the date that the transaction is occurring. So it's assuming that the transaction's happening today. That's
Hmm.
fair. It may be happening on a different day though. So say for example, your library is open on the weekends, but maybe it's not staffed on the weekends. So you could choose this a different date from the picker here. So maybe someone checked out Beloved on Sunday and I've just come in on Monday and I'm filling out I'm like looking at a log and filling out the system with these updates. Um, and then next, you're picking the due date. So it's assuming that this book will be checked out for my default hold period, which happens to be 21 days in the sample library. Now,
Okay.
I can pick a different length of time or a different period for this checkout in particular. I can also pick a specific date that this item will be due if I prefer to. Or if I'm feeling really generous, I could say that there's no due date at all. And then I'll save the transaction, which I'm not going to save it right now. Okay, so that's me sort of walking slowly through all the options, but I just want to show you how quick this can be if you're not walking through and talking
Okay.
through all the options. So if I type something a little bit more specific here, it knows what book I'm talking about automatically. I am checking it out to Tom. I'm going to just type it. There we go. I'm checking it out today for 21 days and click save.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, so I don't know, maybe 5 seconds, something like that. Not a ton of time. So I wanted to show you that. So let's jump into our settings because I want to talk about these buttons that I mentioned a bunch, right? Uh,
Mm-hmm.
so to decide whether or not, I'm going into our settings page here, to decide whether or not your patrons are allowed to circulate items on their own and what sort of buttons you want to provide for them to do so, you're going to start by thinking about patron accounts.
Okay.
So patron accounts can be either used with full circulation or simple circulation, or you can disable them entirely. I'll talk through each. So what we've been looking at is an example of full circulation. In
Okay.
full circulation, each patron has a unique ID. And that ID can be anything, right? It can be a random set of numbers. It could be their phone number. It could be their email. It could be some version of their name. You decide. Um, if I want to up the security a little bit more, I could also require a password for each patron's unique login. And I could even make that password really hard, right? Numbers or capital letters, up to 9 digits, right? Um, so, I don't need to do that in this sample library. We want some security here, and we want that security to be unique, where each patron is responsible for logging in with their unique info. But we don't want it to be, passwords included, right? We're just doing an ID is plenty for this library's needs. And your needs might be a little bit more secure, right? You might want to up the security level here. Now, simple circulation, instead of having each patron enter a unique ID and password. Everyone shares a password with simple circulation. So it's one password, and therefore we only recommend this for libraries with really high trust environments. For example, a classroom library where there's already some supervision over, what's getting checked out to whom, and also, there may be like less cause for mischief, so to speak. Um, Simple circulation could be a really good option, right? Because it simplifies things. You don't have to remind each patron what their unique ID is. If they keep forgetting, you can just have the password up on the wall, and your students can walk up to, the class iPad and check out the book when they're ready to. So they'll put in the password, and then a pop-up will appear. And once they put in the correct password, listing every patron in your system, and they'll pick themselves from that list.
Oh.
It doesn't have to be a full display of each patron's name or anything quite that revealing. It can be, but you could also de-identify it a little bit by making that list display just barcodes, right? So maybe the student will only be able to pick out their own student ID. So that way they're less likely to, like, check books out to other people. Or, you could just do like first name, last initial if you just don't want everyone to have everyone else's last name. So there are levels within simple circulation too. Oh, and here's where you'll put that password, right? So whatever you want here. Um, so there are levels of security within this as well, and it sort of details how this works here. However, again, if you don't have a really high trust environment, we do recommend just using full circulation.
Okay.
Yeah. And so once you've decided that, you can come down to circulation settings and choose to either enable or disable the hold button and the checkout button. So if you got patron accounts enabled and then you will allow a checkout button, that means that your patrons can check out books on their own, right? They have all the tools available. Um, if patrons have accounts, but they can't check books out on their own because you've disabled this button, they may still be able to review holds and things like that, for items that you've checked out to them. So there are ways you can play with this and really customize how circulation works in your library. And you can always reach out to us if you have questions about, the best way to set this up for yourselves.
Okay.
Um, a quick note about placing a hold in TinyCat. So in TinyCat, a hold is a rather simplified thing. It's not a complex hold queue, which means an example of a complex hold queue would be um, I've checked out a book, and the next person who wants to read that book has placed a hold on it, and maybe a second person has placed a hold on it after them. And when I return it, that next person is notified, and so on and so on. We don't have that option in TinyCat because it's TinyCat, it's not Giant Cat, right? So it's a pretty simple hold system. All it does is it changes the status of the item to like on hold, essentially, meaning that other patrons can't check it out. And
Ah,
it also notifies the librarian that a hold has been placed so that they can go grab it off the shelf or whatever they need to do to prepare it for pickup. Now, you get to determine, I'm scrolling down to the default hold period. So in the sample library, that hold would last for 2 days. I could change that to whatever I want, but 2 days until it would go back to available if the patron hasn't checked it out. So patron places a hold, they haven't checked it out, 2 days pass, it's available for anyone again, right? And I, as the librarian, know that the hold has expired and can put it back on the shelf.
okay.
And you can also change your default circulation period here. And remember, I was talking about renewals. So you can
Mhm,
choose how many times, up to four,
mhm.
or none, that patrons can renew an item and how long that lasts, right? It doesn't have to match either. See that my circulation default is 21 days, but my renewal
Uh-huh.
default is 14, right?
Yep.
So up
Okay.
to you. Um, a couple other things to note on the circulation page. Call number system. So some libraries prefer to use like a Dewey Decimal call number system. Some prefer Library of Congress. Some have their own custom system, right? You can catalog multiple call numbers for a single item in Library Thing, but in TinyCat, you need to pick which one you want to display.
Okay.
So if you've created your own custom call numbers, you'll just select, and you want to use those here in TinyCat, you'll select personal or custom system from this drop down. Right. Another cool thing on this page is that you can send automated patron reminder emails.
Mm,
So yeah, so this is a great way to, cut down on some work and make it a little easier to remind your patrons when things are due, right? So we've got before and three options to send emails afterward, and you can choose when those go out, or if they go out at all.
uh-huh.
So that's one way to cut down on some work, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Um, I want to jump back to the main settings, the basic settings up top here. I'm going to run through the settings we haven't touched on yet. And then I'll just show you a couple more things before we go off into question land. So basic settings are where you're going to update the name of the library, basic stuff, and what's included in your TinyCat catalog, right? So you might have cataloged some items in library thing that you don't want displayed in TinyCat. For example, a wish list that you've cataloged for the library. You don't have those books yet, probably, right? So you don't want to display them here in TinyCat. So you leave that unchecked. Okay. Content is where you're going to pick and choose what displays to your patrons, right? Do I want to show the genres that are cataloged for these items? Do I want to display these collection labels? Even profanity. So I remember I said that member reviews are from Library Thing members, and they can be a bit more candid. Well, every now and then they might include profanity, right?
Yeah.
So for some patrons, that's not an issue. For some, it might be. So you could star bomb those words when they appear in reviews. I would say that's pretty rare, though. Most Library Thing members are relatively tame, even if they're passionate. Okay, going to the homepage settings. This is actually probably where you'll spend the most amount of time while you're setting up your TinyCat, besides cataloging the library itself. Because this is, I'm going to show you where it is again. This is this homepage, right? So it's the landing page where all of your patrons will come to explore your library. It's the launching pad for all of the things that they can do here. And it's
Mhm.
also the first thing they see.
Okay.
So you can see I've used some really basic HTML, stuff that I just Googled, honestly, to add some more spacing here and put some bolding around text. So feel free to, go wild with the HTML if you want to, or use some really basic stuff to make it a little bit fancier if you want to. And feel free to email us if you ever need help getting that HTML how you want
Oh,
it. Yeah.
okay.
Yeah. Of course, you can update your logo and you can also manage that cover carousel that we looked at on the homepage.
Mhm.
Remember,
Mhm.
I said it could be random items or recent items. So this is where you'll manage that or hide it if you want to, but I don't know why you would want to. I like it. Um, and I want to show you what it looks like to create a link here. So these are the links again at the bottom of my homepage.
Mhm.
Although, as you can see, I could also have them up top instead, right?
Okay.
So up to you. So you add a link, you choose what's going to display here, and then you start typing or copying and pasting the URL that you want the link to go to. And you can reorder them and delete them really easily. Um, so looking at this old books link that we clicked on earlier, I just want to show you that the URLs can be rather simple. So you might kind of copy and paste a few, and then you're like, I got the hang of this, and start typing them yourself. Just make sure to go back and test them afterwards. And
Okay.
here, the URL is just the library name, the searching for the tag old plus books, not rocket science. So
Okay.
that's good to know, right? That the URLs themselves are simple. Okay, the search page is where you'll determine what shows when a patron does a search. The detailed page is what shows and some settings where you can adjust things on that detail page or book page, that item page where we
Mhm.
were looking at all of the text related to Beloved, right? So you can customize the that ask about this button here. And remember I said you could include a pop-up message. So if you wanted this to say need an account, please include a phone number, et cetera, et cetera. You could do that here. And again, that button lives right here. Um,
Okay.
you could also move it down to the more section right here.
Oh, okay.
Mhm. So it's the only, but that's why it's not strictly in circulation here. So it moves around a little bit. But um, this is also where you can pick and choose those social media sharing buttons.
Mhm.
And you can also choose to replace item descriptions. So descriptions for books in Library Thing are kind of I don't want to say set in stone by any means, but they're a bit formal, they're a bit official, and they're kind of hard to edit in Library Thing,
Mhm.
because usually they're coming right from a publisher or something like that. So there's some control in Library Thing, but in TinyCat you have a lot more control over that. You can actually completely replace a description with one that works for your library.
Mhm.
So you'll simply type your description in the summary field and then check this box. And then whenever you have something displayed in the summary field in library thing, it will display in place of the standard description here in
Okay.
TinyCat for you.
Okay.
And if there's nothing in the summary field, it will just display the standard description if there is one. Mhm.
Okay.
And remember, I said you can move things up and down that detailed page, like the published reviews. Maybe I want that at the bottom. Or, maybe I want to include my library's own reviews. So I'm going to bump that up into the visible territory here and put it above these other reviews. You can also remove things entirely from the details page.
Okay.
Patrons, essentially, this is where you'll choose what info you do collect about patrons in your system and how that's collected.
Okay.
Patron accounts and circulation we've already looked at, so I'm just jumping down to contact info. So here you can change the display like of your organization name, main contact. This is important. whatever details you change here will actually change for your entire library thing in TinyCat account. That is to say that this is you. You are the main contact. So if you change your email address here, you're actually changing your account email address, both in library thing and TinyCat. So just be cautious of that.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and then this is fun. So remember I mentioned that in circulation, you can send these automated reminder emails. Since they're automated, they come from like a system no reply. Um,
Okay.
but you can put an email address under patron contact, and that will appear in the automated patron notification emails. So
Okay.
that way, there's someone they can reach out to and plead their case that they totally returned that book 5 weeks ago, etc.
Yep. Okay.
If you want to split up the work a little bit, you can also include a billing contact, and whatever address you put in here will actually receive all the automated invoices and receipts, etc., for your TinyCat account. That way, the main contact isn't dealing with quite so many emails, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's one way to split up the work.
Okay.
Speaking of splitting up the work, admin users are that other kind of staff member that I was saying you can add to your TinyCat account here. So I've just
Okay.
got one person helping me in this sample library, but I can add others really easily. So I choose their username and password. If I want to put an email in, I can, and then I choose their role. So I could add a volunteer. And a volunteer can only sort of circulate items and look at past transactions. Uh,
Okay.
they can also download some of that data for me. A staff role means that they have the same permissions as a volunteer, plus they can look at patron info and manage that. And they can also look at the reports and generate some more reports for me.
Okay.
And then billing admin users can only access billing pages. So quick notes about this. It's a great way to kind of limit the cooks in the kitchen, right? If you're limiting what people can do because you've given them a specific role, it means probably less things will accidentally get messed up and you'll have to track things down, etc.
Mm-hmm.
Another benefit is that whenever you're learning some new software on a team, it can be a lot to onboard everyone to that. So if there's less they have to learn because there's less they can do, you'll also speed up the onboarding process. Um,
Ah,
what what we don't recommend is sharing your main admin login, right? So we're talking about admin users here, but we don't recommend sharing this main administrator password
okay.
because that password is, again, the login for your TinyCat account and your library thing account, meaning that anyone who has that password can edit all your records,
Mm,
delete your whole catalog, right? So you want to practice just real good internet hygiene with this password
okay.
and create extra admin user accounts for anyone else you want to help with the library.
Okay. So it sounds like, say I have 5 volunteers,
Mhm.
they could all have the same password.
They could all have the same password, yeah. And you could also create unique passwords and unique IDs for them, right? So they could each have a different username but the same password, or they could all have a shared username would be just fine, right? Like all
Okay.
my volunteers log in with a volunteer username and the password is the library name or something. It's up to you. Um,
Okay.
Although sometimes it can be helpful to sort of see, okay, who's still logged in on this device, etc. So
Uh-huh. Right.
depends on your processes, right?
Okay. Okay. That's
Um,
helpful.
Great. Just a few more things I want to show you. So on the admin pages, let's just look at what it looks like to add patrons. So this is my patrons page. If this were a real library, we'd have a full table full of patron info here. So adding a patron is really simple. You just click that button and type the info here,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Okay.
You can also import patrons en masse. And here's a sample file right in the pop-up that shows you how you should format that data to get the patron info smoothly into the system.
Okay.
You can also export patron data so you can see it in like a spreadsheet and filter, but you can search right in here. You can also sort this table, which again would make more sense if there were more than one patron here.
Mm-hmm.
editing, you just click the pencil. You can also merge patrons in this pop-up. Now,
Okay.
if you require passwords for your patrons, those passwords are really secure in TinyCat. We do not display the password anywhere, so it'd be it's a really good way to get that security amped up if you need to. It really depends like where your computers are and stuff like that, right?
Mm-hmm.
So to generate a password, you click this hashtag. And so passwords don't exist for patrons until you generate them manually. So it gives you this warning that once you generate it, you'll only see it once. So when I click this, I see this password here, right? It's this 3-digit password, and it's not going to be shown again anywhere. So that means that I, as a librarian, need to communicate this password to Tom Bombadil in some sort of secure way, right? Maybe through a student portal, or I hand it to him on a slip of paper. Whatever makes sense for my library's systems. Because once I click OK, that password's gone. Now I can always generate a new one though, right? It'll just be a different password every.
Yeah, got it. Okay.
Awesome. So you can look at past transactions on the transactions page here. And so it starts by showing you active transactions, and it'll, highlight if they're overdue. And one cool feature is that you can extend all due dates if, say, the library's closed over winter break and you don't want all your patrons to be bombarded with return soon, it's overdue, etc. emails over break. You can extend all active due dates until the library reopens again, right?
Okay.
You can look through all your transactions as well. And I know some libraries have strict privacy policies where they need to delete patron data after, maybe 6 months or something. So this is a great way you could search for specific
Mm,
patrons. You could also search for specific statuses, etc. You can search pretty much anything here. And then you can also select those transactions and delete them if you want to,
okay.
or export all the transactions, that sort of thing. You
Okay.
can also see transactions by title and by status. I use this by status page a lot. It's just, what makes sense to my brain.
Okay. I'm sorry, can you just review what you just said about statuses? What?
No problem. Yeah, yeah. So I'm looking at transactions here and I can view all of them active by title or by status. And so I'm seeing all transactions for overdue items, right? And it's giving me some quick facts as well. So I find this page really useful just because this is sort of how my brain works is I want
Uh,
to see transactions that were overdue or like what transactions have happened that are resource only.
okay.
Yeah. So it's just up to you. You can see the same information in a ton of different ways.
Okay.
Yeah. So you're seeing the same stuff, just organized differently. And you can also, I don't know if I pointed this out, I'm sorry, but you can export these transactions into like a spreadsheet. You can also generate different kinds of reports about your items or your patrons here in the reports tab.
Okay.
That's just right here. And then you have a bunch of quick launching points to get to library thing from your TinyCat, which is great because, again, that's where your items are edited and created or deleted. So if you need to go manage that or you want to go, order some barcodes or whatever, you have quick access to library thing from that library thing link here. And the very last thing I wanted to show you in TinyCat today is just that um, it is not something that has an app. It's just web-based right now.
Hmm.
Um, we may create an app someday, but we don't really have any strong urge to do that because it works really well on all devices already. So if you're using a computer or a tablet or even like a smartphone, right, it just looks fine in
Hmm.
all sorts of screen sizes. It's really flexible that way. Um,
Hmm.
Great. So we've still got a few minutes. Do you have any questions that I can answer? That was the tour.
That that was great, Zeph. I really appreciate this.
I'm so glad, Carol.
Exactly what I needed.